I'm Rick Miller, and welcome to
Xing the Gap.
Xing the Gap is an extension of my Boom trilogy of solo stage shows, documenting 75 years of history on our planet from 1945 to 2020. It's about the big stories, from Hiroshima to COVID-19, but it's also about family. Part 1, Boom, is about the baby boom generation and my parents' coming-of-age story. Part 2, Boom X, is my own Gen X coming-of-age story. And Part 3, Boom YZ, is about Gen Y, millennials, and Gen Z, and my daughter's coming-of-age story. In Xing the Gap, I'm not the performer, but the host of an intergenerational conversation between a baby boomer and a millennial. Sometimes we break the rules and go younger or older, but the goal is always the same, to discover how differently we see things, but that together we can build bridges of understanding, find a shared humanity, and save the world from itself. Boom! In today's episode, my guests are Fiona Reid and Pavri, two incredibly talented Canadian artists. Fiona's a legend of stage and screen, member of the Order of Canada and a mother of 2 children. Mare is a multidisciplinary artist who does it all: opera, musicals, theater, film and TV, with a particular passion for new Canadian works. We cover a lot: generational misunderstandings, technological transformations, evolving views on policing, institutions and authority, letting go of old ideas, being frightened of social media, acknowledging algorithms, stretching phone cords, admiring your parents even though they don't know what LOL means. That plus a game show. My friends, it's time for
Xing the Gap.
Mare and Fiona, welcome to Xing the Gap. Mare, I'll ask you first. Tell us about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm an Indo-Canadian soprano from London, Ontario, and I grew up doing music and opera. And after studying music at university, I went on to perform opera and musical theater for over 10 years. And now I've sort of, since the pandemic, transitioned into more film and television, obviously, because theaters aren't open right now.
Perfect. And Fiona?
I am a Scottish-British immigrant from the age of 12 in Canada, so definitely Canadian. I've done a lot of theater, and I've done some TV. And The King of Kensington was popular with people who are of my vintage. And it was a movie called A Big Fat Greek Wedding, was sort of seen by a lot of people. So that it gives me some recognition, but mainly my body of work is in the theater, pretty much.
Perfect. And you mentioned vintage. Would you identify as a generational cohort? Are you a baby boomer or something else?
Definitely baby boomer. Okay. Definitely white and definitely privileged. I identify as all those things.
And Mare, do you identify with a cohort at all?
I would say I'm a millennial. Yeah.
Okay. Millennial. And for everything that is carried with millennials and baby boomers, that's what this podcast is all about, is to try to shake up some of those things that we tend to dismiss and judge, and to actually listen and learn from each other a little bit too. So I'll ask you on that note, if you were to give a quick hit about, I'll start with you, Fiona, about millennials in general, what do you think is a big misunderstanding that we have about millennials? Because I'm Gen X.
Oh, yeah. So the difference between Gen X means you were born when then?
I was born Gen X is generally mid-60s to like 1980-ish. And anyone after that is considered a millennial. And the latest generation, so my daughters are Gen Z, born sort of after the mid-90s.
Oh, I would say that, so my kids born in the 80s. What does that make them?
That makes them millennials, like early millennials.
Okay. So just to say, I think the biggest, the thing that one says about millennials is, they're so entitled. And I think what we get wrong is that the world is so much tougher. I mean, when I look at how easy it was for me to become what I became, and how hard it is now for someone to do the same thing, I just don't think we have a right to say that they're entitled, because you better feel entitled, because you're not going to get the kind of legs up that I had. So yeah, you have to own yourself, So I was allowed to go from pillar to post with a measure of, oh, I'm so humble, and oh, I really hope I get ahead, but I just don't really know what I'm doing. And well, good luck with that. I wouldn't get to first base if I were doing that today. So yeah, that's, I think, the biggest misconception.
Okay. And Mayor, the word entitled, I'm sure you've heard it being thrown around for millennials. What does that make you feel? And on the contrary, how do we misrepresent baby boomers?
Okay. So I'll go with the misrepresenting baby boomers first, because my parents' generation has really surprised me. I mean, I remember the day that my mom got WhatsApp and started texting and using her phone. And I was like, Mom knows how to do this. And I have to add, she used LOL a lot because she thought it meant lots of love.
So that's so good.
So I'd say something serious and she'd be like, oh, LOL. And I'm like, Mom, what are you like? Nothing's funny about this, So, but the way that they've adapted, I can't imagine, I see my parents, I saw my parents typing with one finger and now they're as fast as me. And I'm really impressed. I would say I'm just really impressed with all the things that they've had to adapt to, because I mean, I do remember dial-up internet, obviously, but the transitions that they had to make were way more intense than what I did, I feel. And I do remember feeling very surprised at, how tech savvy my parents can be. That was definitely a surprise.
One aspect of ageism in our culture is that we discount older people for being unable or unwilling to learn. And though some of our elders are indeed unable or unwilling to learn, in my experience, the vast majority of older people are hungry for knowledge. They want to grow, and they want to feel connected to family, friends, and community. And though technology can help us, it often hinders us because it moves so fast, and it deepens the gap between generations. Baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials all have this in common. We're digital immigrants, unlike Gen Z, who are digital natives. We weren't born with the internet. We immigrated to it. And though we use different platforms and communicate in very different ways, we're all in the same boat. And we're all just trying to stay afloat.
I would lose my mind when my sisters or brother picked up the phone and I was Googling something.
Right.
Because they would just disconnect, you were always like, who was that person?
And Fiona, do you remember the time when we had one phone in our house and there was a cord? And I don't know if you remember that, but you'd have to stretch the long cord into the other room to get a private conversation.
I remember it really well because when I was doing, I won't say who, I don't want to give this away, but when I was doing my TV show, a certain actor would phone me on Saturday mornings to tell me how he thought the week had gone and how we were doing. And I got to say, he wanted to talk. And I remember that darn cord because I thought if I could just make myself a coffee, but will it reach, I felt like, I felt like I thought, okay, I'm not on the clock. It's Saturday morning. I don't want to, but you listened and you said, okay, I'm listening. But woo, that was hard. Cause now I don't always like to do FaceTime because I can get stuff done when I'm on the phone, right? You can really, as long as you have to be very careful about the microphone and what you let slip and get hurt. But you can, I can do stuff in the kitchen and if I chop not too loudly, I can get dinner started, but in them days, boy, it was really
phone curled under.
Commit. Yeah.
And you have people joining in from the other room going, "Oh, sorry to interrupt. There's no private calls." Yeah. Okay. So
then you go too far and you drop the phone. Remember, the phone goes sunk on the floor because you actually did try to go into the kitchen. Yeah. Anyway.
So technology obviously is a huge distinguishing factor between the generations. But I mean, Fiona, you have I know that your parents both served in the in the UK military. You have played the Queen, and I don't mean Freddie Mercury. You've tasted institutions in a very interesting way, and you probably have a great deal of respect for the people you've portrayed as well, such as Queen Elizabeth. And now I'd say our younger generation has a different view of institutions, and I just want to kind of hit on that a little bit to find out, first from you, Fiona, what do you see in terms of your generation's view of how we respect institutions or challenge them versus a younger person's perspective on it?
Yeah, I think we need a dose of what the younger generation has to give us. My daughter, oh gosh, I'm always telling tales out of school, and I hope I'm not, but my daughter is now at law school, but she did experimental theater for some years, and she's always interested in social advocacy. And so I was working in Montreal at the Centaur, and she said, "Oh, Mom, I'm going to a demo," and it was for a man of color had been killed by the police, and so we're walking down Sherbrooke, and they start chanting, "No justice, no peace for the police." And I said, Julia, I just can't bring myself to say the police. And she said, "Why not? What?" Like, it totally, she looked at me like I was a frog or something, like, how could you not say that? This is all pre George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. And now I understand more of that, but certainly the idea of, because when my kids were in high school and stuff happened, for them to call the police, they would say, "Mom, we don't want to do that." And I go, "But they're the police. Do you call them?" So I've been brought up short. Certainly my obsequiousness to authority, I still have it. It goes right down to my feet. I mean, if a policeman stopped, I would be blah, 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 because you can't get rid of that muscle memory of that fear. But I'm starting to see that it has to be earned, and I'm learning a lot from my kids in that respect. Anyway, that's enough on that. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm learning from my kids too. And I had a similar issue around defund the police and the word defund the police. And so, Meryl, I'll turn it over to you. You probably have, I'm not asking you to represent your generation. It's more your personal opinion, but how do you feel your cohort feels about institutions in general?
Well, I think it depends on what the institution is, but I do feel like we do have a voice to make change. And that comes with, again, technology and social media and Twitter and Instagram and all of those things. And I feel like we as a collective feel like we can make a difference, which is a really good feeling. So to challenge different institutions and to challenge things that we don't agree with, I think Fiona, you're right. Like, I feel like anyone in my generation would have no problem just saying F the police.
Yeah. And so when you hear, I mentioned defund the police and the nuance around what that word meant, and I'm not asking you to stand behind defund the police. I'm just curious because my daughter told me something that was interesting. She said, we don't necessarily think there should be no policing, right? Defund doesn't mean take away all the money. It just means refund in a way, like reallocate funding. And I said, well, why do you use defund? She said, well, if we didn't use defund, no one would pay attention to us. If we said reallocate the police funding, that wouldn't grab people's attention. So what do you think of that?
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with her. And I think when I think defund, I think reallocate anyways.
And an older person like me and maybe Fiona would hear defund it and you think, are you crazy? We really don't want any police at all? I don't know, Fiona, am I speaking for you? That's what I first heard.
And this is where we have to be educated by Mayor's generation and by our children. It's just like Black Lives Matter. When people co-opt, I mean, how could you co-opt something like Black Lives Matter? How could you possibly have an issue with that? And anyone who says White Lives Matter needs to go to school and not come away and go on social media until they've learned an awful lot. Like, there's just no equivalency. But so unfortunately, 3 words can mean such different things to different people and take them in different directions. And so the challenge is to have the dialogue between those two groups who hear such different things. I guess it's just a question of how much people want to let go. And I think with my generation, especially some white people, have trouble letting go because it's just too much has been taken for granted. And anyway, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. For those of us past a certain age, especially those of us whose voices have been dominant in society, see straight, cis, white, male, it's tempting to think that adding our voice to everything immediately makes everything better. No. One of the major themes of the Boom trilogy and Xing the Gap is that younger generations need to be heard, and that means people like me need to shut up and listen sometimes. And when you listen, you learn to accept that things are changing constantly, and it's normal, it's natural, it is inevitable. And all these words are slowly, they're fluid, and they're always shifting every year. And Mayor, I'll ask you this. I have a feeling that young people, given that their careers are going to be disrupted every 5 or 10 years, they have a much more a sense of fluidity versus older people who become more encrusted in an ideology, an idea, and they become less prone to openness and fluidity. Would you say that's true?
I think it depends on the person. I don't know if that's a generational thing, because you have all stars like Fiona and yourself, recognizing all these things and having these kinds of conversations. So I don't know. I don't know if that could be a generational thing. Yeah.
What about around gender and sexuality? Would you say younger people have more of a tolerance to even breaking up institutions like marriage and shaking out definitions of it? Would you say that that's more generational?
Yes, for sure. I think that gender fluidity is much, much more of a conversation today than I'm sure it was, when you guys went to school, and things like pronouns and all of that. It's just really at the forefront of everything right now. So definitely.
Okay. And I'll ask you both this. Are you active on social media? Maybe we'll start with you, Fiona. Are you, do you participate?
I won't do it at all. I just won't do it. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of it because of first of all, I'm the kind of person that after I've had a dinner party, I weigh everything the next day. Did I say this? Did I offend that person? So can you imagine if I put something out that lacked the right context on social media? I'm so frightened of something coming back to haunt me. The lack of humor, like I don't think social media understands humor all the time. So I can't go near it, which is terrible because we have a son in Australia and we miss all kinds of good stuff on Instagram with him, but I just won't do it. And so I have friends who are on social who, if they think I should know something, they go, oh, we better let Fiona know. So I'm the sort of the tail end of everybody else who's on social. They go, okay, we'll let her in on this, but that's it.
And Mayor, I know you're active on social media. Well, active more or less, because I've did some research today and I went and looked you up. So how would you say your relationship to it?
I love social media, and I love how now people are using this to research people. And I think that is a thing. I mean, I think if somebody tells me about a new person, the first thing I do is find them on Instagram.
Is that where you get your news and information too?
A lot of it. I would say most of it. Yeah.
And do you, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if there's anything big and major happening, you're going to hear about it on social media for sure.
And do you check where it's coming from, or do you mind sometimes? Is that something that crosses your mind?
I do try to, and I definitely have friends that are really into fact checking, all of that kind of stuff. So I have, that group of people that I can really trust when it comes to those kinds of things. But I also think, we're human and we make mistakes. And I really think that my generation of people, I know that there's this whole cancel culture out there and all that. And I just feel like, our thoughts and opinions are fluid and they're going to change. And I could have a different opinion on what we talked about, next week. And I think that's the beauty about being human, and we're going to make mistakes, and mistakes are okay. And to empathize with people who are growing and learning and changing, I think is super important.
So you're a millennial, and it said that, Facebook is slowly becoming something for older people. That's, especially with the bad news around Facebook these days and the rebranding and such. Is Facebook something you use, or are you more Instagram or something else?
Or you mean Meta? I heard Meta, it's now called Meta. I
saw Zuckerberg speak about Meta, and he appears in my play. I do an interview with him and Noah Yuval Harari, who's an author I respect a lot.
Oh, very much.
He's just sitting there and he's nodding, and he just seems like a robot. And I used to view Mark Zuckerberg as just being someone who I was buying into the idea that he just wants the world more connected. And he happens to be someone who wants creative control. I've been a very creative, controlling person my entire career, and trying to be a business entrepreneur in his industry that is not as lucrative as tech. But I identified with him early on, but I sort of look at this now and I think, I don't know, what's your view about Facebook generally? I know what you're going to say, Fiona. You're going to go, you don't even touch it with a 10-foot pole, right?
No. And I think Mark Zuckerberg has a bit to answer for, because his policy in is it Vietnam or is it Indonesia is quite different than his policy in North America. Yeah. I mean, what he does to make profit there's no consistency to it in terms of morality. So, yeah. So, but Mayor, don't you ever worry about the algorithm, that your news is determined by an algorithm? Does that?
I think I'm just aware of that. Yeah, I think I'm just aware of that, and I think just knowing that kind of takes the power away from it. I mean, I haven't had Facebook for so long now. I don't remember when I had Facebook. I have a Facebook page, but that's just for singing stuff because I feel like it needs to be out there. But I haven't been on Facebook in so long, and I do think that, social media is such a double-edged sword, not only for misinformation, but for your own peace of mind. And I think it's also such a huge time waster. I think there are benefits, but it's very easy and scary to go on the other side of it, where, you're spending way too much time on it. I feel so terrible for the generation younger than me, who they believe that people look completely flawless all the time with all these wacky filters and things like that. I don't really believe that there's anything. I think it's hard to be truly authentic on social media. I think everybody's just like, this is my highlight reel, but also everybody knows that, and it can be this fun, creative outlet. It's all kind of whatever you make of it. But I do really feel like it's this double-edged sword where it's like, you could go too far, and it could be very misinformative, and it could be very detrimental to your mental health, but it's also this great thing. So.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's great. The fact that we have GPS and I can Google, and there's so many great things that come with it. And, the Gen X side of me, who was sort of brought up in the 70s, kind of mistrusting many institutions, government, especially media, I come at it going, I don't want anyone pulling my strings. So when I think of the algorithm and the autocrats that will more and more use the algorithms and giving me misinformation, I have a real Gen X kick on, I don't want anything to do with that. So my compromise is I use it for promotion. And like you, Mayor, I'm on it somewhat reluctantly, but I've decided never, ever to read a comment section ever, ever again. Because I find comment sections just descend into, after the third comment, which might be constructive, it turns into the shit show that the internet can be.
I didn't in Australia, didn't Facebook have to make some accommodation with the publishers because they had to pay for some of the content or to the publishers, and they agreed to do that? Because that's what I think should happen, so that at least if you're a journalist working for the Washington Post or the Sydney Herald or whatever, you get some credit for that, and somebody knows whose voice it is and for whom they work. And I mean, I just don't understand how Facebook can get all that content for free and just purvey that content. And they make the profit. Anyway, it doesn't seem fair to the people who write the articles.
Facebook, or Meta these days, gets away with it as they haven't been regulated as a media company, even though that's how much of the world uses it. If Facebook and others were regulated as media companies, they would face the same strict advertising rules and restrictions that govern TV, print, and traditional media. It's one part of a larger problem in this great social experiment that is the internet, where the prevailing business model, the attention economy, has created the most successful companies in the history of companies. They connect us to the world, but they also feed us with propaganda. They watch our every move, they manipulate us, and they suck our data for profit. A far cry from the utopia imagined at the dawn of the internet. I offer the audiences in my play a vote on 3 different endings to the show that they can vote on with their phone, and they do this through intermission and some all the way to the end of the show, between utopia, which I define as more or less, let's reimagine the road. Status quo, which sounds terrible, but actually means let's just carry on the road, trying to, push these institutions forward as slowly, as best as we can. And dystopia, which is destroy the road or blow up the road. Most young people vote for dystopia because they have a view of that is like, yeah, let's blow up these institutions and start them again. And most older people are like, it's been such bad news, I want utopia. So I get these votes and I have to then perform the ending that each audience has chosen. But I'm going to ask you, without being able to elaborate on those 3, what would you vote for if you were sitting in a theater going, what ending would I like to see? I'll ask, Mayor, why don't you go first?
Well, I was just laughing so much because as soon as you said all the younger people wanted dystopia, I was like, yeah, that was totally my first answer. I just want to blow everything up and start it all over again.
Okay. And Fiona, I know it's hard to say out of context, but if you were presented those 3 words, utopia, dystopia, status quo.
For the future of the world?
Well, it's kind of like, what would you want a happy ending to this show, knowing that dystopia is going to have Donald Trump reelected, those kind of things.
I heard a whole thing about hope, because climate change is the biggest issue in our world. And if dystopia means you blow up the power of the corporations to simply make profit over what makes a better world, then if that gets me to utopia, I'll take that dystopia. But only because I want to get to utopia. I want it so badly because the world deserves it.
Yeah. Okay. So before we do the little quiz show part, I have one last question. If you were to pass on a message to each other's generation and say, this is a simple message that I think I would like you to know about our generation, what would it be?
Oh.
Who would like to go first?
I would say, I bet you, I would love to know what Mayor thinks about this, because I can tell right away if somebody treats me like I'm an old person. So don't presume that, but if you see the most wrinkled face in the world, don't presume, don't judge what's inside, because you just never know. So
Mayor?
This is such a tough one. For my generation, I would have to say, I think it's hard, at least for me, following the footsteps of my immigrant parents. So does that mean I'm first generation Canadian? My parents aren't from here?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think for me, at least, there's a lot of pressure to be as resilient in a way as my parents, because, they came here with nothing and built this incredible life for themselves. And sometimes I think to myself, like, could I move to another country at 21 and with nobody and all that kind of stuff. And so I would just say, like, follow your bliss, because you're, like it is, I just feel like it is so hard being a first generation Canadian, because I could never do what my parents have done. And so sometimes I have to say to myself, okay, be gentler with yourself. You're doing the best you can. And they paved this path so that I could follow my bliss. So really, I guess, be grateful for that, and not having to do the trials and tribulations that my parents did, and how much sacrifice they have made for me, and so that I could follow my bliss, so that I could become an opera singer, and just to enjoy that and make the most out of it.
Those are beautiful answers. Thank you. Now, this is the part of the Xing the Gap podcast where I call it the generation gap. It's a game show. I do it on stage. I basically ask a bunch of stupid skill testing questions to find out how little we actually know about each generation's pop culture. Ooh, Fiona goes, ooh, because you think you're going to get nothing. But maybe you'll both get nothing, or maybe you'll both surprise yourself. So I'm going to start with the youngest first. Oh, Fiona, you want to go first? No.
I just guarantee you, I will fail both. That's all I can say.
There's no failing. Failing is, a big theme in my work is fail better, right? We're in theater. There's not.
Oh yeah, oh, right. I love that. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to start with you, Mare. All right, here we go. Name a 1960s fad dance.
Oh God. The disco?
No, that was the late 70s, but that's okay. The twist would have worked or anything like that. That's okay. That's okay. Name a British prime minister from the 20th century.
John A. Macdonald?
No, he was Canada's first prime minister.
I know nothing. I'm mortified.
That's okay. It's all good.
Hide in my sweater now.
No, it's okay. 1970s feminist icon TV show. Who can turn the world on with a smile? Mary
Fiona, mouth it to me.
Mary Tyler
Moore?
Moore. Yes.
Oh my God.
Okay. Merritt, name the Beatles. All four of them.
God, this is so bad.
Name one Beatle.
Ringo.
Ringo. What's his last name? Star. Wow, that's good. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just thinking. If I pulled out a rotary phone, would you know how to call Fiona?
No, I don't have her number memorized.
Oh, it's true. But if you had the thing in front of you,
I could do
you would
it.
know how to do it technically.
It's
okay.
super fun. Yeah.
And if you had to load a film into a camera, would you know how to do it?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Let's see. Name a dance that Madonna made famous.
She made a dance famous?
Strike a pose.
Oh, Vogue!
Okay, good. Okay, famous 1950s television show, I Love Lucy, starred this comedian, Lucille, one of the most famous comedians of all time, Lucille.
No idea.
Ball.
Oh
okay,
my gosh.
Sorry. Okay, who did Prince Charles really want to marry?
Camilla.
Good. Do you know bonus points for last name?
Oof, I can't remember.
Camilla Parker Bowles.
Okay, yes.
Okay,
oh
I think
God,
that's
this is so hard. Rick, thanks for your help.
I'm going to start with you, Fiona. Are you ready? The clock is ticking now. What is this object I hold in my hand here? Don't know if you can see it well.
Is that a dongle?
Very good. You got it's an adapter, but some people call it a dongle. Way to go. Okay. Would you know what a vape pen looks like?
I know what vaping is.
Okay. Half points.
A vape pen? Would I recognize a vape pen if I saw it? No.
Okay. If I had one here, I'd show it to you, but I don't. Okay. Finish this lyric. It's getting hot in here.
Why don't you take off all your clothes?
There you go. Way to go. All right, well done. Okay, Fiona, if you like someone on Tinder, do you swipe right or left or up or down?
This is so good. This is so good. Please tell me you know this one.
Oh, come on, Fiona. I've got you frozen on Zoom in a kind of like Edward Munch pose.
I'm frozen because I'm like this right now.
Yeah, you were frozen. Okay, now I'm going to ask you the question again. If you like someone on Tinder, you swipe which way?
I say you swipe left.
Sorry. No, I think
Swipe right.
Mara knew that one. Okay. Let's see.
Which one is it?
It's swipe right. You swipe right. And if you really like someone, this is for Mara. If you really super like someone, what do you do? This is for Mara.
That was a thing.
You can swipe up. No, that was a bonus for the millennial.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fiona, name a member of a boy band. Either Backstreet Boys, New Kids on the Block, One Direction.
I don't know. Wasn't Justin Timberlake in one?
Yes, well done. That's good. Okay, that's good. Okay. Name the Simpsons couple from television.
Oh, Marge and Homer.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
Oh, one of those Disney characters that I've never seen. Princess somebody.
No, it's not Finding Nemo, and it's not Ariel. No, it's Mayor. Who lives in pineapple under the sea?
I don't know.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob. You didn't know. So you didn't know that one either. Okay. What is a boomerang? When we're talking technology, what's a boomerang?
Oh well, I mean, is it when I know the news reference of that, like when news, you want to make some kind of point and it ends up making the opposite point because it boomerangs back. So the person ends up getting the unwanted attention, right? It's also called the Streisand effect, isn't it? I heard Rachel Maddow talking about it. So
I've learned three things. And that one sentence.
We didn't do a boomerang on set together? We didn't do a boomerang together?
What is your version of a boomerang, Mary?
Okay, so it's basically when you're about to take a photo, but it's like 2 seconds of just movement. So you just do one thing and then it repeats over and over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a GIF or a GIF or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, while you mention it, Fiona, what's the difference between a meme and a GIF?
No idea. I have no idea.
It's okay. Generally, a meme is a fixed image, whereas a GIF has movement to it, usually some kind of repeated movement. Okay. Let me see if I can wrap it up with one stupid question. If someone is clapping back at you online, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Harold Wilson. No, just kidding. I was giving you a British Prime Minister.
You're a British Prime Minister. You've met them all, haven't you?
Thank you, Fiona.
No, if somebody's clapping back at you, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I don't know. I'm going to say it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's to respond, generally quickly to criticism. So it's not really a good thing. It's not like, bravo, the Queen. And how does the Queen wave? Can you just throw me a little bone here? How do you wave as the Queen? Oh, that's lovely. Fiona, Mayor, I can't thank you enough. Frankly, I don't know who won, but it doesn't matter because
Fiona.
She's even got the wave at the top. She knows how to use Zoom and all of its intricacies. So you have both been wonderful. I know we haven't necessarily, solved all the world's problems, but we had a bit of fun and a super conversation. I got to know each of you. It's been an honor and a privilege. And I thank you so much. And I hope we get to continue the conversation sometime in person.
Thank you.
I will not.
Thanks so much.
I will not clap. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks,
Rick.
This has been Xing the Gap. Whether you're watching this as a video or listening to the podcast, it was all recorded and edited by me, Rick Miller, with extra multimedia from my amazing team at Kadoons. This series is being launched in partnership with Leap, an online community where life experience meets innovation, created by CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. I'd like to extend a huge thanks to the Leap and Cabby teams for helping make it happen. You can find out more about their work at cabby.com/leap. A very special thank you to my two guests today, Fiona Reid and Mayor Pavri. Let me know what you think of our conversation and who you'd like to hear as future guests. You can find me at Rick Miller Actor on Twitter or Instagram, or on my website, rickmiller.ca. For more information about the Boom Trilogy and other projects on stage and online, check out boomtheshow.com or kidoons.com. And remember, in a polarized world, you have a choice. Build a wall or build a bridge. Build bridges, not walls.
Xing the gap.